500,000 years ago, long before cities, before gods, before memory itself, the earth was a world of predators. The air carried the scent of rain and blood. The forests pulsed with life and danger. Across continents, still raw and shifting, the ancestors of humankind moved carefully through landscapes that did not welcome them. They were not rulers here. They were survivors, fragile, watchful, unarmed against the strength of beasts that had ruled the earth for millions of years before them. The world was older, heavier, slower. Mornings came with mist that glowed silver over rivers where crocodiles waded. The afternoons shimmered with heat across endless plains where great cats stalked in silence. And when night fell, the forests awoke. The sound of insects became a chorus, and behind it came the low growl of something unseen. Something that reminded every living thing what it meant to fear the dark. In this world of hunger and instinct, a new kind of creature walked upright. They were not yet human in the way we think of the word, but their eyes held a restless spark. Homo erectus, heidelbergensis, and others like them wandered from Africa into Asia and Europe, carrying fire and memory. They were small in number, scattered across valleys and riverbanks, building lives on the fragile edge between safety and annihilation. They did not yet understand time or death or destiny, but they understood danger. The first knowledge ever learned was not how to hunt, it was how to hide. Every step was a calculation, every sound a possible warning. Their world was alive with movement. Shadows shifting through trees, wings cutting through sky, eyes glinting from the tall grass. To survive meant to listen, to stay silent, to move when the wind moved. Fear was their teacher, and the lessons were written in blood. We like to believe evolution made us strong, but strength was never the key to our survival. It was awareness, the ability to notice patterns, the silence before the strike, the sudden stillness in the air before attack. That was what set our ancestors apart. They began to watch the hunters, to study them, to learn their ways. And slowly, from the tension of survival, intelligence began to emerge. The world around them offered no mercy. There were no walls, no weapons of metal, no safety in numbers. They lived in small groups, 10, maybe 20, moving constantly. They gathered roots and fruit, scavenged the kills left behind by stronger jaws, and shared what little they had. Fire was everything. Fire meant safety, light, warmth, and the illusion of control. Around the fire, fear loosened its grip. Around the fire, they could think. That was the beginning of story, the voice born from terror. Each generation carried the memory of what lurked beyond the light. The elders taught the young where to walk, when to climb, when to run. They spoke in gestures, in rhythms of sound, in glances that meant more than words. Over time, those fragments became language. The first human voices were not songs of joy. They were warnings, shaped by necessity. The first words humanity ever spoke were not hello, but watch out. We did not begin as conquerors. We began as prey. In every cave, in every forest, in every valley, there were traces of something watching us. The claw marks carved into ancient bone, the deep scratches left on stone walls, the faint impressions of talons beside human footprints. These are not coincidences. They are the signatures of the predators that ruled our early history. For hundreds of thousands of years, humankind lived in their shadow, hunted by creatures faster, stronger, and infinitely more adapted to the world that surrounded them. But fear, relentless and unending, did not break us. It refined us. In fear we found awareness. In pain, understanding. In terror, invention. The instincts we still carry, eyes drawn to movement, skin prickling at silence, hearts racing in darkness, are the echoes of a million narrow escapes. They are fossils of emotion, reminders of what it once took to live. Somewhere in that ancient darkness, under skies filled with predators' cries, something changed. A mind awoke. It began to question not just how to survive, but why survival mattered. The spark of thought turned fear into curiosity, and curiosity into strategy. The same fire that once warded off beasts became a tool for creation. The same stones once thrown in desperation became weapons. Humanity's first act of defiance was not a roar, but a whisper. We will not vanish. From that moment, everything began to shift. It did not happen quickly. For tens of millennia, the struggle continued, but something in the balance had turned. The hunted had begun to learn the ways of the hunter. And even as predators still ruled the earth, they were no longer unchallenged. Our ancestors had found their advantage, not in strength, but in the strange power of the mind. The ability to imagine danger before it arrived, to plan, to prepare, to remember. This was the birth of consciousness as we know it, the awakening of awareness, shaped by survival. Long before civilization, before art or language or law, there was fear. It was the foundation of our species, the invisible architect of everything that would come after. When we look back at that time, we see not an age of triumph, but an age of endurance. We were not kings of the earth. We were ghosts clinging to existence, yet somehow refusing to die. Every footprint left in the dust, every faint mark of fire on a stone, is a testament to the stubborn persistence of a species that should not have survived. And yet, against every odd, we did. The night belonged to the predators, but the day slowly became ours. And in that fragile victory, humanity began to write the first unspoken line of its story. A story born not from dominance, but from defiance. For hundreds of thousands of years, the earth tested the fragile creature that would one day call itself human. Every sunrise was a reprieve, every night a question of survival. The balance between life and death was as thin as the flame that flickered between trembling hands. The forests were full of predators, each one a lesson carved into time. The first humans were not explorers or warriors. They were witnesses to a world that seemed determined to erase them. They learned to see what others could not, to notice the way birds scattered when danger approached, the way silence fell before an ambush, the way the scent of decay traveled on the wind before the eyes could see its source. Each observation was survival. Each breath was borrowed from something larger and more ancient than they could comprehend. The earth was alive with warning signs, and to ignore them was to vanish. When the rains came, the rivers turned violent. Crocodiles waited where the current slowed, hidden just beneath the surface. Lions moved silently through the grass, their fur blending perfectly with the land. Above, giant raptors circled with patience that had no mercy. Humanity was surrounded on every side, not by chaos, but by precision. Every predator knew its place. The only unknown was the prey that refused to die. In this theater of danger, the human mind evolved into its weapon. The same fear that paralyzed other creatures became the fire that drove us to think ahead. Memory replaced instinct. Instead of reacting, we began to predict. The awareness that once saved us from claws became the foundation for everything that would define us. In learning to avoid death, humanity discovered how to imagine the future. There was no moment of awakening, no single generation that rose above the rest. Evolution does not announce its miracles. It shapes them quietly, over endless ages of suffering and endurance. What we call intelligence was born from countless nights of waiting, listening, remembering. The mind became a mirror of the world around it, reflecting danger, turning it into understanding. From fear came pattern, and from pattern came power. We began to move differently, not just to flee but to anticipate. We learned to build traps, to work together, to plan migrations that followed herds and seasons. Fire became more than protection. It became a symbol of memory, a visible reminder that the night could be pushed back. The flame that once belonged to lightning was now something carried, nurtured, and taught. It was the first inheritance of our kind, passed down from trembling hands to curious minds. But even as knowledge grew, so did loss. Entire groups vanished without trace, their bones scattered across riverbeds and caves. The record of their existence is fragmentary, broken like the land itself. In that silence, scientists now see what we cannot. They see struggle written into our DNA, traces of extinction and recovery, of numbers shrinking to the edge and then expanding again. The human story is not one of steady progress, but of survival through collapse. Some nights, when storms swept across the plains, the early humans must have wondered if the world itself was alive and angry. Thunder rolled like the voice of gods not yet imagined. Lightning illuminated the shapes of trees, the eyes of animals, the faces of each other. In that light they saw the truth of their condition. Small, temporary, vulnerable, but aware. And that awareness was the seed of something vast. From awareness came meaning. The first signs of ritual were not about worship but remembrance. They gathered bones, arranged stones, left offerings beside the bodies of their dead. It was an act of defiance against the emptiness that surrounded them. To remember was to resist oblivion. The first human emotion was not joy, it was grief. The first human idea was not creation, it was survival. Through hardship they learned empathy. Through fear they learned unity. Through loss they learned purpose. These lessons would echo through every era that followed. Even today, when we look up at a dark forest or hear a strange sound in the night, the same ancient current moves through our veins. Our bodies remember what our minds have forgotten. The world once hunted us, and it never truly stopped. Yet, in all that suffering, something extraordinary happened. The hunted became aware of themselves as part of something larger. They began to see patterns in the stars, shapes in the clouds, reflections in the water. From fear of the unknown came fascination with it. Curiosity was born. The instinct that once made us flee now made us explore. The very force that nearly destroyed us became the reason we endure. As the ages passed, predators began to disappear. The balance shifted. Humans multiplied, spread, and adapted. The world began to change in our image, but the memory of those early days never left. It shaped how we dream, how we build, how we love, and how we fear. We inherited not just intelligence, but anxiety, vigilance, imagination. We carry within us the ghosts of every creature that once stalked our ancestors. The silence of the time gap still puzzles scientists. Why did humanity vanish from record for so long? What force could erase entire generations from history and leave so little behind? Some call it climate, others catastrophe. But perhaps the answer lies not in destruction, but in transformation. Maybe, during those lost ages, humanity was not dying out, but changing, evolving into something the world had never seen before. Fear forced us to adapt. Adaptation made us intelligent. Intelligence made us dangerous. And danger, in turn, made us human. The time gap was not an empty chapter. It was the crucible where consciousness was born. Every predator that once hunted us carved its mark into our evolution. Each encounter with death became a lesson written into the human soul. To look back is to see the truth. We did not rise peacefully. We were forged in terror and silence. The ground beneath us is thick with the bones of those who did not survive. But their legacy lives in every heartbeat, every reflex, every breath we take. The story of humanity is the story of fear overcome and remade into wisdom. And as the fires of that ancient world dimmed, the dawn of understanding began to glow. The hunted were no longer hiding. They were watching, thinking, becoming. But the question still hung in the dark. If humans were not yet the hunters of this world, what hunted them when history was silent? In the far corners of the ancient world, long before the first cities, a terror ruled the skies. It was not a creature of myth, but of bone and muscle. A bird so large that its wings could block out the sun. The people who lived beneath its shadow would one day carve stories about monsters that fell from the heavens. But the truth was far older than legend. The predator was real. Its name was Haast's eagle. New Zealand, a land isolated by time, had become a natural experiment in evolution. Here, flightless birds grew to monstrous size, filling the role that mammals played elsewhere. The giant mulla stood over 3 meters tall, grazing in open valleys and forests of fern and mist. It had no natural defenses, no claws, no fangs, no speed. For hundreds of thousands of years it lived in peace. Then came the eagle. Haast's eagle was unlike anything alive today. With a wingspan reaching up to 3 meters, it was built not for soaring, but for killing. Its talons were as long as a tiger's claws, each one strong enough to pierce through bone. Its beak was hooked and heavy, its legs thick as a man's arm, its chest a knot of muscle built for sudden, brutal descent. It did not chase its prey. It fell upon it like gravity itself. Scientists who studied its fossils found fractures in moa bones that tell the story of impact. Bones crushed from above, ribs snapped inward, skulls pierced clean through. One strike from this eagle could weigh more than 100 kilograms of force, enough to drive a victim to the ground in a single heartbeat. The kill was silent, precise, almost surgical. Nature had created a weapon perfected for dominance. But as terrifying as this predator was, its story did not end with birds. Evidence suggests it may have hunted something far more dangerous. When early humans arrived in New Zealand, drawn by fertile land and endless game, they entered a world that was already claimed. To the eagle, they were just another form of meat, smaller than a moa, slower than the wind. Imagine a morning in that forgotten world. Mist curls between the trees, and the air smells of damp earth and sap. A small group of people moves quietly through the forest, gathering berries, carrying spears tipped with sharpened stone. The forest is still, unnaturally still. Then a shadow glides above the canopy, vast and soundless. A heartbeat later, the silence breaks. A shape drops from the sky. The eagle strikes with a scream that tears through the air like thunder. The impact is sudden, unstoppable. Feathers explode in a blur of gold and black. A human body collapses under the blow. The torch falls, and the world fills with the sound of wings. The survivors scatter, shouting into the trees. By the time they look back, the predator is gone, carrying its prey upward through the fog. For generations, stories of that shadow would linger. The people spoke of a bird with eyes of fire, a creature that descended from the mountains to steal their children. They called it Puakai, the eater of men. What they remembered as legend may have been history. Haast's eagle was not only a killer, it was a sculptor of fear. Its presence changed the way humans moved through the land. They learned to travel in groups, to watch the skies, to build shelters with covered roofs. They adapted their behavior, their tools, even their language around the rhythm of danger from above. The human body evolved for ground predators, but here, in this corner of the world, death came from the sky. For early humans, it was a reminder that mastery of fire and stone meant little in the face of nature's oldest rule. There is always something watching. There is always something stronger. The balance between hunter and hunted was never broken, only rewritten. To study the eagle's remains today is to see evolution's cruel genius. Its bones are dense, built to resist the shock of impact. Its claws curve like sickles, each with edges sharp enough to tear through hide and muscle. Even its eyes, large and forward-facing, speak of a predator that could see its victim's heartbeat from the air. It was intelligence in motion, guided by instinct so refined it appeared deliberate. Yet even this ruler of the skies could not escape the fate of all apex predators. When the humans hunted the moa to extinction, the eagle's food vanished. Its power, its perfection, its terror all collapsed in a single generation. Within a few thousand years, the mightiest bird ever to live was gone. Bones turned to dust, wings turned to memory. But the fear it created did not disappear. It became part of us. Every time a shadow crosses our path, every time we look up when the light dims, we relive the awareness that our ancestors once felt under the gaze of Haast's eagle. The instinct to look skyward when nothing should be there is not superstition. It is remembrance. The fossil record gives us bones, but the mind gives us story. The story of the eagle is not only about extinction, it is about inheritance. It reminds us that power is temporary, that survival belongs to those who adapt, not those who dominate. The humans who once hid from the sky would later raise their eyes to it, charting stars, mapping the heavens, imagining flight. What began as fear became fascination. Perhaps that is the lesson of the time gap. Humanity learned not only to endure terror, but to transform it. The very creatures that hunted us shaped the way we see the world. They taught us awareness, vigilance, imagination. In the mirror of predators, we found reflection. And in the memory of the eagle's shadow, humanity discovered something it could never lose: the will to rise. To understand Haast's eagle is to understand perfection in the language of predators. It was not the largest bird that ever lived, but it was the most efficient killer the skies had ever known. Evolution had sharpened it to a singular purpose: to strike fast, to strike hard, and to leave no chance for complete escape. Every part of its body was a design of violence refined by time. Its massive chest powered wings that could fold in an instant, converting flight into a dive with terrifying precision. Its talons, curved like iron hooks, could exert pressure greater than the bite of a lion. Its beak, hooked and heavy, was built not for tearing flesh, but for dismembering it. From the moment it launched into the air, the world below fell silent. The eagle hunted not with noise but with invisibility. It soared high above the forests, scanning the ground with eyes so sharp they could detect the smallest movement from nearly 2 miles away. When it saw what it wanted, it did not hesitate. The hunt began in silence. The descent was pure momentum. From the heights, it folded its wings and dropped like a spear, cutting through air at speeds approaching 150 kilometers per hour. There was no warning, no cry, no shadow. In less than 2 seconds, the impact struck with the force of a falling boulder. Its talons drove deep into flesh and bone, pinning its prey to the ground before the victim even understood what had happened. Death was immediate, almost merciful in its brutality. Scientists have reconstructed these strikes through the fractures left behind on fossilized bones. Each broken rib, each crushed vertebra, tells the same story. An ambush from above, a collision so powerful it shattered life in a single heartbeat. For the eagle, the world was a field of targets. It saw opportunity where everything else saw safety. But Haast's eagle was not a mindless machine. It was strategic. It understood terrain, light, and timing. It hunted at dawn and dusk, when shadows stretched long and confusion ruled. It used the shape of the landscape to mask its approach, gliding between ridges, following wind currents that carried it unseen. It waited for moments when its prey lowered its guard, drinking or feeding, then struck with mathematical precision. Each kill was not chance, it was calculation. Even in death, its victims fed more than its hunger. The eagle's strike cleared space for scavengers, its leftovers sustaining the entire ecosystem. Hyenas and carrion birds followed its trails, knowing that where the shadow had fallen, there would always be a feast. The predator was a keystone in balance, its violence a form of order. When humans entered its world, that balance shifted. The eagle had no reason to fear them. To a creature of such dominance, these small, upright beings were simply another species of ground animal. Its hunting instincts did not distinguish between Moa and man. Both moved clumsily beneath the trees, both were blind to the sky. The first human victims of Haast's eagle would not have understood what was happening. They would have seen nothing until the air itself split. One moment of stillness, one flash of movement, and then silence again. It is easy to imagine the terror those survivors must have carried. The feeling of eyes watching from above, the knowledge that death could fall from the clouds without sound. Over time, humans learned to adapt. They built shelters beneath the canopy, avoided open ground, and crafted tools designed not only for hunting but for defense. Spears were tipped upward as well as forward. Children were taught to look to the sky. What began as reaction became culture. The predator had become an unintentional teacher. The eagle's greatest strength was also its downfall. It required immense energy, sustained by large prey. As human activity expanded, the great moa began to disappear, hunted for food, its eggs taken, its nesting grounds burned. The eagle's world began to shrink. Without its primary source of nourishment, The ruler of the skies grew desperate. Some researchers believe that in those final years, Haast's eagle turned increasingly toward human prey, driven by starvation. But desperation has limits, even for the powerful. Within a few thousand years of humanity's arrival, the most fearsome hunter in the air vanished forever. Its extinction was silent. No great battle, no dramatic ending. Just a slow fading into the quiet of time. The forests that once trembled beneath its wings grew still again. But in that stillness, a strange inheritance remained. Humanity carried the memory forward. The fear of the sky became part of our story, a shadow that lingers in the corners of myth and instinct. Even now, when we hear the rush of wings above us, or feel the shadow of a bird pass across the ground, something ancient stirs. It is the echo of a time when the heavens were not safe, when survival depended on the eyes of those who looked upward. We have forgotten the predator's name, but not its presence. Haast's eagle is more than a fossil. It is a reminder that nature does not favor strength or size, but adaptability. The hunter that once ruled an island was undone not by weakness, but by change. Humanity, in its hunger and curiosity, altered the balance of life. The prey became the architect of extinction. Yet even in that paradox there is awe. The same species that once trembled beneath the eagle's shadow would one day soar higher than it ever could. We took the fear that once caged us and turned it into flight. We built wings of our own, engines that burned brighter than any feathered predator's strength. What began as terror became transcendence. That is the legacy of the hunt. The story of Haast's eagle is not a tale of monsters, but of mirrors. It shows us what we were and what we might become. It reminds us that every act of survival carries both creation and destruction. The hunter and the hunted are forever bound. And in that bond lies the oldest truth of all. Evolution is written in fear. The winds had changed, but the fear remained. And in the skies above the first humans, something vast still waited with eyes that never slept. Long before the first stories were carved into stone, the land belonged to the great cats. They ruled not only the plains, but the imagination of every creature that walked upon them. Their presence defined fear itself. Among them, none was more terrifying than the saber-toothed cat. With fangs longer than a man's hand and muscles forged for ambush, it was the embodiment of death made flesh. To early humans, it was not an animal. It was a nightmare that breathed. The saber-toothed cats were unlike any predators alive today. Their bodies were compact and powerful, their forelimbs thick enough to drag prey twice their size to the ground. They were not built for speed, but for precision. They did not chase. They waited. Hidden in the tall grass or the shadow of stone, they struck with explosive force. In a single bound, the distance between life and death vanished. The largest of these hunters, known as Smilodon, was a living paradox. It was short and heavy, built like a bear but moving with the grace of a cat. Its jaws were not designed to crush but to pierce. Each strike was a calculated gamble, the blade-like teeth slicing deep into the neck or chest of its victim. The kill had to be perfect. One mistake and the fragile fangs could break, leaving the predator helpless. It was an assassin shaped by risk. Fossils found across the Americas tell the story of its reign. In tar pits and riverbeds, bones of mammoths, bison, and even early humans lie tangled together, all bearing the same marks: deep punctures, clean slashes, broken spines. The saber-tooth left its signature in everything it touched. Its world was one of silence followed by chaos, a single instant where nature revealed its cruelty and beauty at once. For early humans, encounters with such predators were not rare, they were constant. Campsites found near ancient kill zones suggest that humans often scavenged the remains left behind by the cats, risking their lives for scraps of meat. Sometimes the scavengers became the scavenged. In those moments, the balance of power was absolute. There was no fight, no contest, only terror. Imagine the world as it was then. The sun setting behind a wall of trees, the air thick with the smell of blood. A group of humans kneeled beside a carcass, cutting strips of flesh with stone blades. Their voices are low, their movements quick. In the distance, a shape watches. Golden eyes fix on the scene, patient and unblinking. The cat moves soundlessly, each step calculated. The humans do not see it until the grass trembles, until the silence turns into movement, until it is too late. One strike, one scream, and the order of nature reasserts itself. The saber-toothed cat did not need to hunt every day. Each kill was a masterpiece of timing and strength. Its claws tore through hide, its teeth found the arteries, its body pinned the prey with the weight of inevitability. When it fed, vultures waited in trees and hyenas circled at the edge of the clearing. Even the bravest predators knew their place. But what made the saber-tooth extraordinary was not only its power, but its intelligence. Its skull reveals a brain capable of strategy, of coordination. It hunted in small groups, working together in silence. Each member played a role: the ambusher, the flanker, the finisher. To fight them was to fight design itself. For humans, this enemy reshaped the meaning of fear. The knowledge that death could hide in plain sight changed everything. They began to choose their camps differently, sleeping near cliffs or rivers where the ground was harder to approach. They learned to use fire as a circle of defense, not just warmth. They began to carry sharpened sticks and throw stones, their first attempts at long-distance defense. The predators were teaching them innovation. In this arms race of evolution, fear became the spark of creativity. Every attack left a memory, and every memory led to adaptation. The human brain was learning from pain, building the foundations of foresight. The predators could smell blood. Humans learned to smell danger. When scientists study the fossils of that age, they find not just evidence of violence, but evidence of progress. Human tools became sharper, more symmetrical. Fire became more controlled, lasting longer. Social structures became tighter, communication more complex. All of it born from necessity. In the shadow of the saber-toothed cat, humanity learned to think like the enemy. The hunters were teaching the hunted how to become something new. Yet for all their dominance, the great cats were bound by the same law that ruled every creature before them. The environment changed. The prey grew scarce. Ice returned to the north, reshaping forests into frozen plains. The cats that once prowled freely now found emptiness where herds had grazed. Their power, absolute for millennia, began to fade. Humans endured where they could not. Their adaptability became their shield. They could eat anything, live anywhere, turn every threat into opportunity. The predators that once defined their fear became ghosts, their bones buried in the same soil they once ruled. Still, the memory of those fangs remains deep within us. the image of eyes gleaming in the dark, the instinct to freeze when grass moves, the reflex to light fire before nightfall. All are echoes of a time when survival depended on awareness. The saber-tooth may be gone, but its shadow still walks beside us. It is easy to think of evolution as progress, but it is really persistence. The saber-tooth was perfection in a world that changed too quickly. Humanity was imperfection that refused to die. In that difference lay destiny. The earth remembers both, the predator that defined fear and the fragile creature that learned from it. One vanished, the other endured. Together, they wrote the oldest story the planet has ever told, the story of power, loss, and the fragile brilliance of survival. The image of the saber-toothed cat has always been one of a lone hunter, a shadow moving silently through ancient grasslands. But the bones hidden beneath layers of time tell a different story. Fossils found in tar pits reveal signs of healing, fractures, broken teeth, and crushed limbs that had mended long after the injuries should have been fatal. That single fact changes everything. The saber-toothed cat was not alone. It lived in groups, cared for its wounded, and fed its sick. These predators were more than muscle and instinct. They were a social force bound by cooperation. Their power came not only from strength but from unity. The patterns found in their bones show a rhythm of survival that mirrors our own. Together they hunted, together they endured, and in that shared struggle lies the beginning of something deeply human. When a predator learns teamwork, it becomes unstoppable. A single saber-tooth could kill, but a pack could dominate. Working together, they could bring down giants, bison, camels, mammoths, and sometimes even early humans who dared to wander too far from their fires. To face one cat was to face death. To face many was to face inevitability. Picture a late Pleistocene plain under a heavy orange sky. Herds of horses graze near a muddy river. In the reeds, 3 shadows wait. Their bodies are low, their breath steady. They are patient. When the herd moves, one cat circles wide to the left, another flanks from behind, and the third remains still, its golden eyes fixed on a single target. There is no sound, only breath and heartbeat. Then, in a single instant, everything erupts. The first cat launches from the grass, a blur of muscle and dust. The others follow with terrifying coordination. The herd scatters, the ground shakes, and screams echo across the valley. In seconds, one horse falls. The cats strike together, claws tearing, jaws locking, working as one mind. The kill is efficient. The feeding is shared. The balance of nature is restored. This was not chaos. It was design. The saber-toothed cats were strategists. They knew the value of patience, communication, and timing. They read the wind, the light, and the movement of prey. Each hunt was a test of coordination perfected through countless generations. Theirs was a language of glances and silence, of movements too subtle to measure, yet as deliberate as any human plan. Humans who watched from a distance must have understood that power. The lesson was written in terror. To survive such hunters, they learned to act like them. They began to move in groups, to guard one another, to strike together when threatened. The foundations of human cooperation may have come not from compassion, but from imitation of predators. In ancient camps near kill sites, scientists have found human bones mixed with those of large cats. The evidence suggests that both species fought for the same territory and prey. Sometimes humans scavenged from a cat's kill. Sometimes the cats followed human camps, drawn by the smell of meat. Between them existed a fragile truce of necessity and fear. Both were intelligent, both were ambitious, and both needed the same thing: to live another day. It was a battle of awareness. The cats perfected ambush, the humans perfected memory. The cats used strength, the humans used fire. Each side pushed the other to evolve. The predators forced humans to think faster, to plan farther ahead, to cooperate more deeply. In their constant contest, evolution accelerated. The cooperation that gave the saber-toothed cats their strength also sealed their fate. When the climate changed, their system could not. The Ice Age spread cold and drought across the continents. The great herds that once filled the plains vanished. With less prey, starvation began to take hold. Packs that once shared everything now competed against each other. The balance collapsed, and the masters of ambush faded into extinction. Humans survived where the great cats did not. Their minds were flexible, their diets diverse, their sense of community unbreakable. They could hunt large or small, move north or south, change tools, change methods, change meaning itself. The great predators had ruled the body, but humans had learned to rule the mind. That difference became the dividing line between extinction and endurance. Even now, something of the saber-toothed cat remains within us. The instinct to move together, to read danger in silence, to trust the group over the individual. All are echoes of that shared history. We remember without knowing why. A rustle in the grass, a movement in the dark, a flicker of light at the edge of vision. These sensations awaken a memory older than civilization. It is the ghost of a predator we once feared and once learned from. At some point after their disappearance, humans began to paint animals on cave walls. Among the mammoths and bison, they drew cats. Large, curved teeth, powerful bodies, watchful eyes. Maybe those drawings were not trophies of victory, but acknowledgments of kinship. The artists may have seen the saber-tooth not as a monster, but as a teacher. The bones in the tar pits of Los Angeles and the plains of Argentina still whisper the same story. They speak of creatures that lived and died together, bound by shared instinct. They remind us that cooperation was never uniquely human. It was an ancient inheritance, passed through blood and time. The saber-toothed cat was not simply a killer. It was a mirror of our potential. Its packs foreshadowed our tribes. Its strategy foreshadowed our wars. Its unity foreshadowed our societies. When it vanished, it left behind more than empty ground. It left behind a blueprint for survival written in instinct and fear. The story of the saber-tooth is not only about extinction, it is about transformation. They were perfect for their world. We became perfect for change. In their fading roar lies the beginning of our voice. In their silence lies the first thought of civilization. And even now, when we light a fire against the night, we are answering the same darkness that once held their golden eyes. They thought they had survived the fangs in the dark. But the next predator would not stalk alone. It would hunt in numbers. And it would think. Across Ice Age Europe, where glaciers carved valleys and forests turned to frost, there lived a creature so massive that even predators gave it distance. It was the cave bear, a beast that stood higher than a man's head when it walked on all fours, and rose twice his height when it stood upright. It was not a monster from imagination, but a reality that shaped every life that shared its world. To see it emerge from the dark mouth of a cave was to glimpse raw power made flesh. The cave bear was the largest of its kind to ever walk the earth. Males could weigh more than 1,000 kilograms, their shoulders broad, their claws curved like sickles, their skulls shaped for both digging and dominance. Yet they were not purely killers. Unlike their carnivorous cousins, these giants lived mostly on plants and roots. But their size and strength meant they feared nothing. When they walked through the valleys, even the great cats disappeared into the shadows. Their world was one of cold winds and endless struggle. The land was a frozen mosaic of tundra and forest, broken by ice and stone. Winters lasted half the year, food was scarce, and every meal mattered. The bears survived through adaptation, retreating into the safety of caves when the cold grew unbearable. There they hibernated for months, their massive bodies slowing to the rhythm of the earth itself. Inside those silent chambers, time stopped. It was in those same caves that early humans also sought shelter. The marks on ancient walls tell the story. Scratch lines, claw gouges, and blackened ash lie side by side. Traces of two species that never meant to meet, but often did. The cave was the only refuge from cold, but it came at a price. To claim it meant challenging the creature that already ruled it. Imagine the moment when humans approached a cave at dusk. Snow falls lightly, and the air burns with frost. A faint warmth rises from within, the scent of an animal sleeping. The entrance is wide, but silent. The leader raises a torch, the light trembling across stone. Inside, a shadow moves. Then a growl rolls from the darkness, low and endless, like the voice of the mountain itself. The humans freeze. The bear rises. In that instant, both species understand what is at stake. The cave bear was not a predator in the way lions were, but its strength made it unstoppable when provoked. One swipe of its paw could shatter a skull. One charge could crush bone and breath. To face it was to face inevitability. Yet the early humans did, again and again. They returned to these caves, leaving behind bones and fire marks as proof of their defiance. The contest for shelter became one of the first wars of territory in human history. In some places, the evidence suggests that humans waited until the bears were deep in hibernation before striking. Spears, tipped with stone, were thrust into sleeping giants. It was not cruelty, but necessity. The difference between survival and extinction could be measured in 12. Firelight and courage. Each victory came at terrible cost. Many did not return, but those who did carried with them something greater than food or fur. They carried the memory of triumph over fear. Over thousands of years, this battle for the caves became a pattern etched into memory. Even after the great bears began to vanish, humans continued to use the caves as sacred places. They painted walls with red ochre and charcoal, creating images of animals long gone. The outlines of bears appear again and again, massive, dominant, standing tall against the flicker of torchlight. Some believe these paintings were not only art but remembrance, a tribute to the creature that once shared the same darkness. The cave bear was more than an animal. It was a symbol of the earth's raw, indifferent power. Its presence reminded humans of their fragility. Its disappearance reminded them of their resilience. When the Ice Age began to loosen its grip and the glaciers melted, the great bears slowly faded into extinction. Some died from hunger, others from disease, and many from the steady encroachment of humans who now claimed their ancient homes. Yet the legacy of those encounters never vanished. It survived in the way humans built their shelters, in the way they feared the dark, in the stories they passed down. Myths of sleeping giants, of spirits within the mountain, of gods who slumber through the winter, all trace their roots back to those frozen caves. The cave bear became more than memory. It became mythology. To this day, when people enter deep caverns and feel the weight of silence pressing in around them, there is a moment of hesitation. A primal awareness flickers within. The echo of breath, the sound of distant water, the flicker of light on rock, it all feels alive. That unease is ancient. It is the shadow of the bear that once ruled those depths. The bones of the cave bear still rest in the places where humans once built their fires. Some lie beneath layers of stone, others sealed behind walls of ice. They are relics of an age when the line between survival and extinction was a daily negotiation. When scientists uncover them now, the air around those fossils still holds the scent of history, the feeling of proximity to something that once stood at the edge of comprehension. The cave bear's size was not its greatest strength. Its true power was what it inspired. It forced early humans to face their limits and, by doing so, expand them. Each encounter taught the lesson that would define our species. Courage is born from necessity. Against impossible odds, humanity learned to stand upright even before the giants that could crush them. The great beasts of the Ice Age are gone, their bones scattered across time, but their imprint remains in the human mind. The fear of the dark, the comfort of fire, the reverence for power, all are echoes of that age. When we light torches in the depths of our fears, we are repeating the same gesture our ancestors made in those frozen caves. The cave bear no longer walks the earth, but in every human heart that dares to face darkness, a fragment of its shadow still lives. In the frozen ages of prehistory, the story of humanity and the cave bear was not one of coexistence but confrontation. Both sought the same refuge. Both desired the same shelter from the cold. The caves scattered across Ice Age Europe became contested ground. Sanctuaries turned to battlegrounds. Each winter the struggle returned, as predictable as the snow. The bears entered first, drawn by instinct to the same chambers year after year. Then came the humans, desperate for warmth, for walls, for survival. The moment their paths crossed, nature's quiet order shattered. Archaeologists have found the evidence of those encounters written in stone and bone. Deep inside the caves, scratches from massive claws mark the same walls where fire once burned. Human tools lie beside bear skeletons, charred, cracked, sometimes embedded in bone. The story is clear. The fight for the caves was not a myth. It was a war fought without words. To understand the scale of that conflict, one must imagine the world as it was then. The air was sharp with ice. Herds of mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses drifted across the plains like moving continents. Predators prowled the edges of every valley. And in the middle of that frozen wilderness, the cave stood as a promise of safety. To step inside was to claim life itself. To lose it was to die in the open. The humans who fought for those caves were not warriors as we imagine them. They were families, carrying children, fire, and hope. Their weapons were crude, sharpened stones bound to wooden shafts. Their courage was their only armor. Yet, they returned again and again, testing their strength against the beasts that ruled those dark chambers. Sometimes they succeeded. Sometimes they became part of the walls they sought to claim. Imagine the moment when a group approached a cave after days of hunger and snow. The air smelled faintly of musk and decay. Tracks led inside, huge and fresh, but they could not turn back. The cold was already killing them. Torches were lit, spears lifted, and the tribe moved forward, every step an act of defiance. The air grew heavy, the shadows alive. Then came the sound, a single growl that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The bear was awake. The clash that followed was chaos made flesh. The bear charged, its roar shaking the stone. Fire flashed, screams echoed, spears shattered against fur and bone. It was strength against desperation, instinct against invention. When the battle ended, the floor was littered with the evidence of both triumph and loss. The cave belonged to whoever still breathed. Over time, humans learned to fight smarter. They waited for the deep hibernation, striking when the bears were half dreaming. It was brutal, but it was survival. Some caves show signs of fires built at the entrances, the smoke driven inward, to suffocate the beasts before humans entered. In others, tools were found embedded in the skulls of massive bears, the blows precise and deliberate. The hunted had learned to become the hunter. Yet, even as humans fought them, they began to revere them. The cave bear represented everything they feared and admired, the embodiment of endurance, of strength, of the raw power of the earth itself. In certain sites, bear skulls were placed carefully in circles or set on natural altars of stone. These were not trophies. They were offerings. In the victory over the bear, humans sensed the presence of something greater than themselves. They began to call it spirit. This was more than survival. It was the birth of belief. The boundary between reverence and terror blurred. The bear was enemy, guardian, and god. To kill it was to conquer fear, but also to awaken guilt. In that paradox lay the beginning of ritual, the first stirrings of meaning beyond the hunt. The caves that had once echoed with battle became places of ceremony. Generations later, as the bears disappeared, humans returned to paint their likeness on the walls, capturing their memory in ochre and firelight. The drawings were massive, deliberate, and intimate. They show not chaos, but understanding. The artists painted not as hunters, but as witnesses, recording the shape of something that had once defined their existence. Each stroke of pigment was a dialogue with memory. In the darkness of the cave, surrounded by flickering flames, they painted not for the eyes of others, but for the spirits of the past. The extinction of the cave bear was not sudden. It faded like a dying ember. Climate shifted, forests thinned, and food grew scarce. Humans spread wider, taking the caves and reshaping the land. The bears retreated deeper until there was nowhere left to go. Their bones became fossils. Their roars became echoes. But even in their absence, they remained. Their spirit lingered in the imagination of the species that outlived them. In myth after myth, the bear became a bridge between worlds. It was the creature that could sleep through death and rise again with the spring. The cycle of its life mirrored the rhythm of the seasons, and through that rhythm, humanity learned the first lessons of renewal. The bear became the first symbol of resurrection, of life reborn from darkness. Perhaps that is why the memory endures. We still feel it when we enter dark places, when we confront the unknown. The instinct that makes us pause at a cave entrance, that tightens our breath in silence, is not superstition. It is memory, carried through blood. The human mind remembers what the human tongue forgot. The story of the cave bear and humankind is not only a chapter of violence. It is the story of transformation through confrontation. The caves we once fought for became the birthplaces of art, of spirit, of thought. The creature we once feared became the first reflection of the self, the reminder that strength and wisdom are born from the same struggle. The cave bear was a teacher carved in muscle and stone. It showed us that to face the darkness is to become something greater than fear. The fires in the caves still burned, but beyond the glow, new eyes watched from the frozen plains, smaller, faster, and far more cunning. When night fell over Ice Age Europe, the darkness did not sleep. It came alive with laughter that was not joy, but hunger. Across the frozen plains, that sound echoed like a cruel wind, carrying the promise of teeth and pursuit. The source was the cave hyena, one of the most relentless predators the world has ever known. It hunted not alone but in armies, moving with a coordination that blurred the line between instinct and strategy. To the early humans who heard that laughter in the distance, it was the sound of doom. The cave hyena was larger than any living hyena, its shoulders as tall as a man's chest, its body built for endurance. Its jaw could crush bone thicker than a human thigh, its bite among the most powerful of any land predator. Its skull was a weapon, its teeth serrated tools of destruction. Yet what made it truly fearsome was not its strength but its numbers. They hunted in packs that could stretch for hundreds of meters, surrounding prey in silence before the killing began. Fossil evidence paints a portrait of their dominance. Caves filled with bones of mammoths, horses, and even humans bear the marks of their feeding. Whole chambers became ossuaries of crushed skeletons, the remains of victims dragged inside and stripped clean. Hyenas ruled the night the way lions ruled the day. When the sun vanished, so did safety. For humans, this was the world of constant vigilance. The faintest sound beyond the firelight was enough to stop a heartbeat. They learned to read the rhythm of the pack, to recognize the pattern of approach, the first distant echoes, the circling shadows, the sudden silence before the charge. When those sounds began, there was no time to run. The only defense was light, and sometimes even that failed. Archaeologists have found caves that tell a story of alternating ownership. Layers of ash and gnawed bones stacked one atop another, signs that humans and hyenas used the same shelters at different times. One season belonged to fire, the next to teeth. It was a battle that lasted for tens of thousands of years. No truce, no peace, only a cycle of invasion and retreat. The cave hyena was not a mindless scavenger. It was intelligent, observant, and cruelly efficient. It could smell blood from miles away, track scent across frozen valleys, and coordinate attacks without sound. Its communication was complex. Growls, yelps, body movements that relayed command and submission. The pack functioned as one organism, every individual playing a role in the dance of death. When humans began to compete for the same prey, the confrontation became inevitable. Hunters following the tracks of bison or reindeer often found themselves being tracked in return. There are sites where human bones bear the unmistakable marks of hyena teeth, cracked open to reach the marrow. Others show signs of battle, weapons buried in the remains of predators. For every hunter that survived, another became a meal. But from this conflict came growth. Fear sharpened awareness, and awareness bred intelligence. Humans began to study the hyenas just as the hyenas studied them. They watched how they hunted, how they communicated, how they worked together. In those observations, humans learned lessons they would carry forever: the value of cooperation, of leadership, of unity against the dark. The hyenas were teachers in their own way. Their pack structure mirrored the social instincts developing within human tribes. Each member had a role, each movement had purpose. They fought together, rested together, survived together. The humans saw that, and something inside them changed. They began to mimic the rhythm of the hunt, coordinating their own movements, dividing tasks, planning ambushes. The predators had unknowingly given birth to the human idea of strategy. Still, the balance of power favored the hyenas for millennia. Their numbers, their speed, their ability to thrive in almost any climate made them unstoppable. Fire kept them at a distance, but not always. There are stories carved in bone and charcoal of nights when the fire burned low, and the laughter drew close, and the morning brought only silence. The Ice Age world was a battlefield of sound. The hyenas' cackling cries echoed through the valleys, answered by the whispers of humans huddled in fear. That sound carved itself into memory, into instinct. Even now, the sudden laughter of modern hyenas in the African night can raise goosebumps on our skin, awakening something ancient within us that remembers when we were prey. The cave hyenas disappeared as the Ice Age ended, their reign fading with the cold. Warming climates destroyed their hunting grounds, and humans spread farther, taking control of the caves and plains. With them went the last of the great night predators that had once kept our species in check. But extinction did not erase their legacy. It lived on in the human psyche. Every whisper of fear, every nightmare of being chased, every instinct that makes us gather around light and not wander too far into the dark. These are the echoes of that ancient laughter. The hyenas taught us to be cautious, to stay together, to guard what we love. They shaped the way we live, the way we think, the way we tell stories about what hunts in the dark. To look back at the cave hyenas is to see the outline of a world that once belonged to them. Their fossils are scattered across Europe and Asia, their teeth still sharp after tens of thousands of years. In those teeth lies a memory of what the earth was before we claimed it, a place where night ruled, where laughter meant death, and where every fire was a prayer against the dark. The humans who survived that age carried its lessons forward. They did not forget. They built societies that thrived on cooperation. They developed language and strategy. They learned to turn fear into foresight. The hyenas vanished, but their influence did not. The first true human communities may have been born from the necessity to resist them. The darkness outside the cave no longer holds the same danger it once did, but the memory remains. The sound of distant laughter, the gleam of eyes in the dark, the tightening of the chest when we hear movement at night. All of it is a reminder that once, long ago, the world belonged to the pack, and that before humanity learned to rule, it had to learn to survive the laughter of its enemies. The cave hyenas were not just scavengers of the dead. They were architects of fear. Every movement they made was calculated, every sound deliberate. Their hunts were not random chases but orchestrated assaults, carried out with a precision that rivals the most efficient predators in history. Their minds worked like maps, plotting terrain and timing. When they hunted, the land itself became a weapon. Unlike solitary killers, the hyenas used communication as their greatest advantage. Their calls were signals, each pitch and rhythm carrying meaning. A short whoop could summon a pack miles away. A low growl could direct movement through darkness. Theirs was a language of blood and bone, designed for one purpose: coordination. In this, they were among the first animals to turn sound into survival. They hunted with intelligence that bordered on strategy. Instead of ambushing from cover like the cats, they drove their prey into traps of terrain. They herded herds, splitting them, cornering them, exhausting them. Once the panic began, the outcome was inevitable. The pack moved like a storm, fast, relentless, unstoppable. No single member needed to be strong. Together, they were destiny. Fossils tell stories of these hunts in the marks they left behind. Long scratches in bone where claws dragged flesh, tooth impressions that reveal the sequence of attack. The evidence suggests teamwork, efficiency, purpose. A kill was not chaos, it was choreography. One group would chase from behind, forcing the prey toward an ambush already waiting. Another group would close from the sides, cutting off escape. And when the prey fell, the feeding began not as frenzy, but as order. Dominant members ate first. The rest followed in rank. It was hierarchy enforced by hunger. For early humans who lived beside such predators, the experience must have been terrifying and transformative. To watch a pack hunt was to witness an idea, a demonstration of what could be achieved when individuals acted as one. The hyenas did not think in words, but in motion. They showed that unity was power, and power meant survival. Humans began to mirror that lesson. The organization of the pack became the blueprint for the tribe. Hunters who once chased prey alone learned to coordinate. One startled the herd, another waited with a spear. Communication evolved from instinct to intention. The same impulse that allowed hyenas to surround a mammoth allowed humans to build the first hunts, the first wars, the first societies. Fear had become a teacher again. At night, when the firelight flickered and the laughter echoed across the plains, humans huddled close and listened. They could hear the patterns in the sound, the way it began distant and rose in waves, the way it suddenly fell silent before the attack. That silence was the most terrifying moment of all. In that void, every instinct screamed to move, to hide, to survive. The pack had vanished from sight, and in that instant, they were everywhere. When scientists examined ancient cave sites once used by hyenas, they found evidence of their dominance written in bone. Skulls of other predators, even lions and wolves, lay among the debris, gnawed and cracked. The hyenas had not just competed with humans, they had eliminated rivals. They were the undisputed masters of the night. Their dens were filled with bones arranged in strange patterns, as if the pack itself had its own rituals of death. Humans learned to avoid those caves unless driven by desperation. The smell of decay was a warning. The sight of scattered bones meant danger. Yet sometimes, hunger left no choice. To enter a hyena's lair was to step into a graveyard that breathed. It was a gamble of courage and madness, the kind of risk that defines evolution. Those who dared, those who survived, passed on not only their genes but their instincts, the awareness that danger could be anticipated, that survival depended on reading signs before they struck. In the bones of both species lies evidence of encounters. Hyena bite marks on human femurs, human spear tips lodged in hyena ribs. The war between the two was not one-sided. For every human lost, another learned. They adapted fire to repel the packs. They used smoke to mask scent. They built barriers of branches and stone. Each small defense became another step toward civilization. The hyenas shaped our psychology as much as our evolution. Their methodical violence taught humans to prepare for the unseen, to fear what moved in the dark, but also to challenge it. That balance between fear and defiance became the foundation of human thought. We learned to imagine threats before they appeared. That imagination would later become the root of storytelling, prophecy, and science itself. As the Ice Age faded, the world shifted. The great herds migrated, forests spread, and the dominance of the hyenas began to crumble. Their numbers dwindled, their territory shrank, and the fires of humanity spread farther than ever before. The same intelligence that had allowed them to rule could not save them from change. They vanished into extinction, leaving only their laughter behind. But extinction is never absolute. The echo of their existence lingers in us, the urge to gather, to defend, to warn, to coordinate. It is all the same code written in a different language. What was once the howl of the pack became the call of community. The instinct that drove hyenas to hunt together became the instinct that drove humans to build together. The predators we feared became the pattern we followed. In their death, they left us a gift, the knowledge that survival is not a solitary act. The pack taught the tribe became the society, and from society came everything else. The laughter that once haunted the night became the chorus of humanity's triumph over isolation. Every time we build fires, every time we call to one another in the dark, we are echoing the ancient lesson of the cave hyenas, that strength is not in teeth or muscle, but in unity, and that the only way to outlast fear is to face it together. The laughter of the hyenas faded with the melting ice, but the lesson they left behind would echo forever. For the next hunters were not beasts. They were shadows in the water. Long before cities rose from stone, before humans learned to master the fire that kept night away, the rivers of the ancient world hid something older than fear itself. Beneath the surface, where light faded and sound drowned, waited a predator that had survived unchanged for over 200 million years. The prehistoric crocodile was not an animal of the past, but a relic of an age before mammals, before humanity, before memory. It was a survivor of extinction, a master of patience, and for those who drank from its waters, the embodiment of death. Across Africa and Asia, rivers and swamps became theaters of ambush. The early humans who came to drink or fish at their edges knew the danger, even if they could not name it. To approach the water was to gamble with something invisible. The surface looked calm, reflecting the sky like glass, but beneath that illusion lay jaws capable of crushing bone, and a mind honed by evolution's oldest rule: wait. The prehistoric crocodiles of the Pleistocene were monsters compared to their modern descendants. Some reached lengths of 7 meters, their skulls alone larger than the body of a man. Their hides were armor, their tails weapons, their eyes periscopes of hunger. They could remain motionless for hours, their pulse slowing until they seemed part of the river itself. When they moved, it was without warning. Water exploded, and in a heartbeat, the prey was gone. For early humans, this enemy was not one they could see or predict. Unlike the beasts of the forest or the plains, the crocodile left no warning before the strike. It was not bound by distance or sound. It came from below, from silence. This was terror in its purest form, the kind that teaches without words. The river that gave life could just as easily take it. Fossil evidence tells of their dominance. Bones of antelope, hippos, and even hominins have been found with the unmistakable puncture marks of crocodile teeth. In the sediments of old riverbanks, scientists have uncovered human remains with bite patterns too wide and too deep for any modern species. These were victims of the ancient giants, creatures like Crocodylus thorbjarnarsoni, or the legendary Deinosuchus, the terror of prehistoric waters. For thousands of years, the struggle between human and crocodile shaped the rhythm of daily life. Camps were built far from the rivers, and water was gathered cautiously, never alone. The first tools for carrying and pouring may have been born from the desire to keep the hands out of the water. Fear, once again, became the seed of innovation. Imagine a morning at the edge of an ancient floodplain. Mist drifts over still water. A family of early humans kneels at the bank, filling gourds, their movements slow and careful. The air is quiet, but one of them senses something wrong. The surface ripples, just slightly. Then it happens. A wall of scales erupts from below. The water explodes into chaos. In a single motion, the creature's jaws close around a leg. There is no struggle, no chance to react. The river swallows the sound, and the surface stills again. Those who survived such moments learned to read the water differently. They watched for bubbles, for shapes beneath the reflection. They began to test the river with sticks before stepping near. Knowledge passed through generations like a sacred rule. Never trust still water. In many ancient cultures that would come long after, crocodiles were both feared and worshipped. They were the gatekeepers of life and death, the spirits of rivers and underworlds. Their presence commanded awe because somewhere deep inside, humanity remembered what it was like to live in their shadow. The myths of water gods, serpents, and dragons all trace back to this shared memory. Beneath every legend lies the echo of a scream swallowed by the river. What made the prehistoric crocodile so formidable was not its size alone, but its patience. Unlike the great cats or the hyenas, it did not rely on chase or cunning. Its weapon was time. It could wait for hours, for days, unmoving. It was the first predator to understand the value of stillness. That stillness became a mirror for humanity's own awakening. To survive, humans learned the same skill: to wait, to watch, to move only when the moment was right. The hunter was teaching the hunted the first lesson of discipline. As humans grew wiser, they began to turn that discipline into control. Spears with hardened tips were fashioned for use near water. Fires were lit to drive crocodiles away. Some tribes began to dig trenches and barriers, turning the land itself into a defense. The predator that once ruled unchallenged now faced prey that could think. And in that silent contest between instinct and intelligence, the world began to change. But the crocodile never truly lost. Even as the Ice Age ended and other giants vanished, it remained. Its form was already perfect, its methods eternal. It survived every extinction that followed, watching species rise and fall, civilizations bloom and fade. It has seen everything humanity has built, and it is still here. The same eyes that watched our ancestors now watch us. There is something humbling in that. When we look into the eyes of a modern crocodile, we are looking into prehistory itself. We are seeing the same gaze that haunted the rivers 500,000 years ago, the same patience, the same ancient hunger. It is a reminder that we do not live above nature but within it, always at the edge of the water, always one step away from the depths. The prehistoric crocodile was more than a beast. It was a boundary. It separated safety from danger, land from death, light from darkness, and it forced humanity to choose what kind of creature it wanted to become, the one that hides, or the one that learns to see beneath the surface. We chose to see. The crocodile was not just another hunter in the ancient world, it was evolution perfected. Every scale, every muscle, every heartbeat served one purpose: to wait. Where other predators relied on speed, strength, or cooperation, the crocodile relied on patience, and in patience, it found mastery. It did not chase, it did not tire. It simply existed at the edge of movement, a living weapon hidden beneath reflection. For early humans, this enemy was different from all others. The saber-tooth revealed itself in power, the hyena in sound, but the crocodile offered no warning. It belonged to a world without mercy, a world that punished curiosity. Those who bent too close to the water's edge rarely came back. The river, the giver of life, became a mouth that swallowed it whole. Its body was a miracle of design. Streamlined, armored, silent. The ridges along its back broke the surface in a pattern that mimicked drifting wood. Its nostrils sat high, allowing it to breathe while unseen. The eyes, set like polished stones, could remain open underwater. Even its heartbeat slowed when it waited, conserving energy for the single moment that mattered: the strike. Fossils show that some prehistoric crocodiles, like Deinosuchus and Morasuchus, grew longer than the largest boats early humans would ever build. Their jaws alone could crush turtles and bison in a single bite. They hunted dinosaurs, then survived their extinction, and still ruled rivers when early humans arrived. They were reminders that the earth itself had memory, of giants that never needed to change. The method of their hunt was simple, almost elegant. They watched the land, memorizing patterns. Herds that came to drink, humans that returned at dawn, the crossing points of animals at dusk. Each detail mattered. When the moment came, the crocodile did not pounce. It erupted. The surface broke, the water screamed, and in that instant, time stopped. To those who witnessed it, it was not nature. It was apocalypse. The prey never saw death coming. 1 second of silence, then water and teeth. It was over before it began. The creature's body twisted in a spiral of violence, pulling its victim down, spinning with the weight of a planet's history. It was not a battle. It was gravity wearing flesh. Humans learned quickly. They built rituals around the river, not from faith but from survival. They approached only in groups, sent the youngest to watch the water, and used long branches to break the surface before touching it. The fear became cultural memory, passed from parent to child in gestures and stories. Every tale of demons beneath water, every myth of serpent gods, every warning whispered to children about what lives below, All trace their origin to the ancient crocodile. Yet from that fear came understanding. Humans began to see patterns not just in predators but in nature itself. They learned that danger had rhythm, that patience could be a weapon as deadly as speed. When they began to hunt, they copied the river's silence. They waited in ambush, just as the crocodile did. They turned the lesson of death into the art of survival. In that way, the crocodile became a teacher without intent. It showed humanity the value of stillness, the power of control. Every great hunter that followed, human or animal, carried a fragment of that lesson. To move only when necessary, to strike only when certain, to let silence be the sharpest blade. As humans evolved, their relationship with rivers changed. They built canoes, they fished, they tamed the water. But even then, they never forgot. The edge of the river remained sacred ground, a boundary between two worlds. To cross it was to test the balance between life and death. And in every splash, in every ripple, they saw a reflection of the predator that once ruled their fear. Even today, in parts of Africa, Asia, and Australia, the crocodile still claims hundreds of lives each year. The statistics are modern, but the story is ancient. It is the same story that began before writing, before fire, before history itself. Humanity built cities, raised monuments, crossed oceans, but the crocodile never changed. It still waits, it still watches, and it still reminds us that evolution does not always reward progress. Sometimes, perfection comes first. In the fossil record, we find its bones layered beneath the remains of everything it outlived: dinosaurs, mammoths, humans from forgotten species. Each layer tells the same truth. The crocodile did not adapt to survive time. Time adapted to survive the crocodile. To look upon it now is to see prehistory breathing. Its eyes carry the weight of eras, its silence the patience of extinction itself. It is the last of the primordial architects, a witness to every age that thought itself immortal. When night falls on the river and the stars tremble on the surface, the illusion returns. The same stillness, the same whisper beneath the water, the same promise of death waiting in silence. We stare into that darkness and feel what our ancestors felt. A reminder that no matter how far we have come, we still live in a world older than fear. The prehistoric crocodile was not merely an animal. It was an equation that defined life. Patience, precision, inevitability. It did not chase history. It became it. And in its reflection, humanity learned its oldest truth, that to survive, one must first understand what waits beneath. The rivers grew quiet. The giants sank into time. Yet as humanity walked away from the water's edge, something greater began to stir within themselves. When the Ice Age sun set behind the mountains of Europe, a shadow moved across the tundra that no creature dared to challenge. It was not the mammoth, nor the bear, nor the hyena. It was the cave lion, the undisputed ruler of the cold world. Larger than any lion alive today, heavier, faster, and more calculating, it was not simply an animal, but a presence, a force that defined fear itself. To the first humans, it was both nightmare and god, the living embodiment of power. The cave lion, Panthera spalea, roamed from the frozen plains of Siberia to the forests of Spain. Males stood nearly 4 feet at the shoulder, weighing over 400 kilograms. Unlike modern lions, they bore no mane, their faces sharp and sleek, their golden fur fading into pale frost near the underbelly. In the low light of dawn, they were ghosts of gold and shadow, almost invisible against the snow. They hunted in silence, and when they struck, the tundra itself seemed to flinch. Fossils show their dominion in every corner of Ice Age Europe. The bones of bison, deer, reindeer, and even mammoths bear the puncture marks of their fangs. Their footprints are preserved alongside those of humans in frozen caves, silent witnesses to a time when predator and prey walked the same ground. But to call the cave lion a mere hunter is to underestimate it. It was an artist of death, a strategist whose every step followed the rhythm of calculation. Unlike the chaotic energy of the saber-toothed cat, the cave lion moved with discipline. It did not roar before the kill. It waited, stalked, and chose its moment with terrifying precision. When it attacked, it went for the head, the neck, the spine, always the weakest point. Its body was built not only for strength but for endurance, able to run long distances through deep snow and biting wind. Where others froze, it thrived. The Ice Age was not a kind world. Temperatures dropped to extremes no modern creature could endure. Food was scarce, and survival was an equation of intelligence as much as muscle. The cave lion mastered both. Its senses were weapons. Ears that could hear heartbeats through snow, eyes that could pierce the darkness of blizzards, nostrils that could catch the scent of prey from miles away. It ruled the cold not by aggression, but by understanding it. To early humans, the cave lion was not an enemy in the ordinary sense. It was a living boundary between existence and extinction. The stories told by firelight were filled with its shadow. Caves where humans painted their memories show its image again and again, lines etched in ochre and charcoal, depicting lions in mid-stride, eyes wide, jaws open. Some of these paintings show lions surrounded by human handprints, as if to say, "We see you. We remember you. You shaped us." The evidence from Chauvet Cave in France reveals something extraordinary. The artists who painted those lions over 30,000 years ago captured them not as monsters but as equals, creatures of majesty, not hatred. Their muscles are rendered with care, their posture proud, their faces calm. It is as if humanity understood that what made the lion terrifying was also what made it noble. In that recognition, something sacred was born, respect for power. Yet respect did not mean safety. Encounters between humans and cave lions were battles of cunning and nerve. Fossilized campsites show remains of humans who had been dragged away from the fire, their bones bearing the same marks seen on prey animals. But the humans learned. They built higher walls of stone, placed fires at multiple entrances, and began to use the landscape to their advantage. The predator forced them to evolve. Each hunt, each loss, each moment of terror left an imprint deeper than any footprint. The human brain was being shaped by fear, molded by confrontation. In the gaze of the lion, humanity saw its own reflection, the same hunger, the same will to dominate, the same spark that refused to yield. It was a mirror held up by nature, showing us what we could become if we survived long enough to inherit the earth. Even in death, the lion commanded reverence. Some caves show evidence of ritual burials, lion skulls placed on flat stones, surrounded by bones and ash. These were not trophies. They were offerings. Humans did not just kill the lion, they honored it, understanding that to destroy such power was to steal something divine. The Ice Age slowly began to thaw, and with it the world of giants faded. As forests replaced tundra, the cave lion lost its domain. Its prey scattered, its strength became a burden, and slowly, one by one, the kings of the frozen plains vanished. But their memory endured in the human mind, immortalized in art, in myth, and in the rhythm of the heartbeat that still quickens when we sense movement in the dark. In every modern lion that walks the savannas of Africa, there is a ghost of that ancient bloodline. The same eyes, the same patience, the same quiet majesty. But none carry the silence of the cave lion, the silence of a creature that ruled the cold, then disappeared into it, leaving only paintings, bones, and the echo of awe. The cave lion was not just a predator. It was the shape of power before civilization. It ruled without cruelty, killed without malice, and vanished without ceremony. And in doing so, it taught humanity one of its oldest truths, that survival is not the same as victory. Sometimes, the greatest conqueror is the one who leaves only memory behind. The cave lion was more than a predator. It was the definition of perfection in motion. Every muscle, every nerve, every instinct was tuned to one purpose: to hunt without error. Unlike the saber-toothed cats, it did not rely on brute force or exaggerated weapons. Its strength was balance, the seamless unity of body and mind. It was the predator the Ice Age had been building for millennia, and humanity was forced to evolve under its gaze. Its size alone was enough to inspire terror. Standing merely 4 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing more than 400 kilograms, it was larger than any lion alive today. But the true danger was not in its body, it was in its behavior. Cave lions hunted with intelligence that bordered on strategy. They moved through darkness with the awareness of soldiers, not beasts. Their senses, sight, smell, hearing, were tuned to perfection, and their patience was almost human. Where modern lions rely on the open savanna, the cave lions ruled forests, valleys, and frozen plains. They could stalk through knee-deep snow without sound, their fur blending seamlessly with the landscape. They knew how to read the wind, to circle down current, to wait for hours in stillness. And when they struck, it was not chaotic violence, but precision. The kill was immediate, almost surgical. The neck, the spine, the arteries, each strike chosen, not guessed. But what made them truly terrifying was their cooperation. Fossil sites reveal multiple individuals feeding together, suggesting that cave lions, like their African descendants, hunted in coordinated groups. A single lion could bring down a reindeer, but a group could destroy a mammoth. They learned to attack from angles, to use terrain, to drive prey into ambush. They were not reacting to nature, they were controlling it. Imagine a frozen valley near dusk. A herd of horses grazes nervously near a riverbank. The snow is still, the air brittle with cold. From the ridge above, 3 shapes emerge, silent as shadows. One lion moves left, another right, while the largest waits behind. The herd senses movement but cannot see. Then, without sound, the lead lion sprints, driving the horses forward, straight into the waiting jaws of the others. The valley erupts. Within seconds, one horse falls, blood painting the snow. The lions feed in silence. There is no roar, no triumph, only survival. Early humans witnessed such scenes, and they remembered. They learned to recognize the rhythm of death, the patterns of approach, the silence before attack. That awareness shaped everything. It changed how they camped, where they built fires, when they slept, how they guarded the young. The cave lions, in their hunt for prey, unknowingly trained the human brain to think like a strategist. Every modern instinct to plan, to calculate risk, to lead, carries a shadow of the predator that once stalked us. Even in death, the cave lion commanded respect. Humans who managed to kill one did not waste its remains. The claws became ornaments, the teeth were worn as symbols, the skulls placed at the entrances of shelters. These were not trophies of pride, they were emblems of survival. To kill a lion was to prove mastery over fear itself. But such victories were rare, and they were paid in blood. Many of the same caves that hold lion bones also hold human remains marked by claws. The line between hunter and hunted was never clear. In the depths of Chauvet Cave, ancient artists painted lions not attacking humans but hunting other animals. This choice is telling. It suggests that early humans did not see the lion as a monster but as an equal. The paintings capture their power and grace, not their cruelty. The artists who created them may have felt awe more than hatred, a recognition that the same fire of survival burned in both species. The cave lion's dominance extended beyond the hunt. It reshaped ecosystems. Where it ruled, populations of herbivores remained balanced. Its presence kept order in the wild. But when the climate began to shift and humans spread across its range, that balance began to break. The warming earth changed the tundra into forests, driving prey away. Competition for food grew fierce. Humans began to target the same animals, and for the first time, they posed a threat not of strength, but of persistence. The cave lion was built for stability, not change. Humanity was built for change, and so the balance reversed. The hunters became fewer, the prey grew scarce. The fires of humans burned brighter, reaching farther into the dark. Each flame marked another victory in the long war between instinct and intellect. Slowly, silently, the lions disappeared. Yet their legacy endured. The image of the lion became a symbol that outlived the species itself. In ancient myths, it transformed into guardians, gods, emblems of courage and strength. From Mesopotamia to Greece to Africa, every civilization would eventually carve lions into stone, paint them on walls, and wear their image as a mark of protection. The predator that once hunted humanity became its eternal symbol of power. Why were cave lions the deadliest? Because they were not just beasts. They were the reflection of everything evolution could achieve when it gave intelligence to instinct. They were killers who understood patience, hunters who embodied purpose. They shaped not just ecosystems, but the human soul. When we fear the dark, when we feel eyes watching us from beyond the firelight, that memory is not imagination. It is inheritance. The cave lion is gone, but the echo of its presence lives in us, in every heartbeat that quickens at the unknown, in every story told about monsters in the night, in every symbol of strength we still carve from stone. The deadliest predators are never the ones we see. They are the ones that remain after extinction, living on in the memory of what we once feared and what we learned to become. The cave lion may have vanished, but in a sense it never left. It became part of the mind that survived it. And in that quiet victory, humanity inherited both its shadow and its roar. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity did not rule the world. It survived in the shadows of those who did. The earth was a theater of predators, and humans were never at the top. They were soft-skinned, slow, fragile. Every shape in the dark was a threat, every sound beyond the fire, a warning. But it was within that helplessness that something extraordinary began to form, the instinct to defend not just the body, but the future. The first humans did not conquer through strength. They endured through awareness. They learned to see what others missed, to hear before danger arrived, to anticipate before it struck. Their survival depended on preparation, not power. Fear became their first teacher, and imagination their shield. From that union of instinct and foresight came the earliest defensive adaptations, small at first, but world-changing in time. Fire was the first revolution. It was more than warmth. It was a wall of light against the unknown. No predator could cross its circle without hesitation. To the early humans gathered around it, fire became a living guardian, a silent partner in the endless night. Every flame that rose against the darkness was a declaration. We will not die quietly. They began to carry embers with them, keeping sparks alive through storms and migration. Fire was no longer a gift of nature, it was a weapon of will. But even with fire, the threats remained. Lions, hyenas, bears, and crocodiles had learned patience long before humans learned courage. So the next defense was structure. Humans began to shape the earth itself, using stones and fallen branches to build barriers. The first shelters were not homes, they were fortresses, walls against teeth and claws. At first crude and temporary, they grew more deliberate, more intelligent. Entrances faced away from prevailing winds to mask scent. Sleeping areas were elevated or enclosed. Caves, once ruled by beasts, became sanctuaries for those who had learned to take them back. Tools followed. Stones became blades, bones became spears, and wood became leverage. But these were not just weapons, they were deterrents. The sound of stone striking stone, the flash of firelight on a sharpened edge warned predators that their prey had changed. The human hand, once used only for gathering, had become capable of defense. With every generation, the gap between hunted and hunter narrowed. One of the most powerful adaptations, though, was not physical, it was social. Humans began to sleep in groups, to post sentinels through the night, to share information through sound and gesture. Language, in its earliest form, may have been born from the need to warn each other. A rustle in the dark became a signal, a shared awareness that multiplied survival. The tribe replaced the individual. Fear was no longer faced alone. Over time, these defenses shaped the mind as much as the body. The constant pressure of threat rewired human perception. They became more observant, more strategic, more imaginative. They learned not only how to defend, but how to predict, how to think in possibilities. The predator struck from instinct. The human countered with vision. Archaeological evidence from sites in Africa and Europe reveals the growing sophistication of these defenses. Layers of ash from controlled fires, circles of stones used as sleeping barriers, spear points hardened in flame, all speak of minds adapting faster than evolution could sculpt their bones. The survival of early humans was not luck. It was invention under pressure. Imagine a night on the edge of the Rift Valley. The wind howls, the fire burns low, and the darkness beyond flickers with unseen movement. The tribe huddles close. One man stands at the edge of the firelight, clutching a spear darkened by smoke. His eyes do not blink. He listens. He does not need to see to know what waits beyond. The rhythm of footfalls, the shift of air. Then, a shape moves between the trees. The man stamps the ground, the others rise, the fire flares. The predator hesitates. Humanity lives another night. The invention of traps marked another leap forward. Pits covered with branches, deadfalls of stone, sharpened stakes, all were born not from aggression but from defense. The idea that a threat could be neutralized before it arrived was a spark of genius. It was the beginning of strategy, of thinking beyond reaction. Humanity had moved from surviving the hunt to shaping it. The mind followed where the hands led. Fear no longer paralyzed, it informed. The adrenaline that once froze the body now fueled calculation. The same brain that trembled before predators began to imagine the future. and with that imagination came the first glimpse of dominance. As time passed, humans became the architects of security. They built shelters on cliffs, carved paths above rivers, and lit fires in the mouths of caves to create illusions of movement that kept predators at bay. They learned the psychology of the hunt, how to manipulate fear itself. The hunted had become a strategist, but even as their defenses grew stronger, they never forgot the lesson that created them. Every fire, every wall, every tool was built on the memory of helplessness. The instinct to defend was not born from victory, but from vulnerability. It was that humility that kept them alive. When the Ice Age began to wane and the great predators slowly vanished, humanity's defenses did not disappear. They evolved. Spears became arrows, walls became villages, fire became civilization. Yet, at the heart of it all, the same reflex remained, the need to guard against the dark. The flicker of fear never died. It simply found new forms. The cave lions, the hyenas, the bears, the crocodiles, they had been the architects of that fear, the silent sculptors of our evolution. In teaching us how to defend, they taught us how to think. The tools of survival became the seeds of intelligence, and intelligence became the first true weapon of mankind. Every lock, every fortress, every alarm that hums in the modern world is a distant echo of that ancient fire circle. Every sleepless night spent listening for danger is an inheritance from those who stood watch under the stars. Humanity may have conquered the predators, but it was they who first taught us how to stand. The story of humanity's evolution is not the story of conquest, but of survival. Every leap forward, every change in our anatomy, every spark of intelligence began as a response to fear. The world was not built for us. It tested us, broke us, and forced us to adapt. The predators that once ruled the earth were not just our enemies. They were our architects. For millions of years, our ancestors lived one heartbeat away from extinction. They were surrounded by beasts larger, faster, and stronger. Their safety depended not on muscle but on mind. And in that endless contest between fragility and ferocity, the human brain began to evolve. Each generation carried the memory of danger a little deeper, the awareness of threat a little sharper. Over time, those instincts became something new: thought. Scientists studying the fossil record can trace this transformation. As the predators grew more cunning, so did we. The regions of the brain responsible for memory, coordination, and planning expanded. Stone tools became more complex, fire more controlled, social bonds more intricate. It was as if evolution itself had decided that the only way to defeat the beasts was to think beyond them. The early humans who survived did so by anticipating the future. They learned to imagine what could happen before it did. That single ability to foresee, to predict, to plan, was the beginning of everything that would follow. Art, science, language, civilization, all of it grew from the soil of survival. In this way, every predator that stalked us became a teacher. The saber-toothed cats taught us awareness. The hyenas taught us unity. The bears taught us courage. The crocodiles taught us patience. The lions taught us respect for power. Each one forced a new adaptation, a new way of thinking, a new definition of strength. And when the last of them vanished, their lessons did not vanish with them. They remained, encoded in our instincts, whispered through our DNA like the memory of a scar. Even our senses are shaped by fear. The way we flinch at sudden movement, the way our eyes are drawn to contrast, the way our ears tune to low frequencies, all are relics of an age when the difference between life and death was the twitch of a leaf. What we call intuition is nothing more than ancient memory, a gift from those who learned to run before we learned to speak. But evolution did not stop at survival. Once humans became aware of their defenses, they began to refine them. The same brain that once built spears began to build ideas. The instinct to protect the tribe grew into empathy. The reflex to anticipate danger became the foundation of curiosity. The need to survive turned into the desire to understand, and understanding became power. Through this slow, relentless process, humanity became the only species capable of shaping not just its body, but its world. The predators that once ruled us had no idea what they were creating. Each hunt, each scream in the dark, each narrow escape was a spark struck against the flint of evolution. Those sparks became the fire of consciousness. It is strange to think that intelligence itself may be the product of fear. But fear, when harnessed, becomes focus. It sharpens perception, deepens attention, and creates memory. The earliest humans who could turn fear into action lived longer, reproduced more, and passed their sharpened minds forward. The others were lost to the dark. In the end, fear selected for thought. It made the mind the ultimate weapon. When the Ice Age began to loosen its grip, the great predators fell one by one. The mammoths and lions, the bears and hyenas, all disappeared into the snowdrifts of history. But humanity remained. It had learned how to adapt faster than the climate, how to hunt what others could not, how to survive where others failed. The creatures that had shaped our fear had, without knowing it, shaped our destiny. Even now, in the age of steel and electricity, we still carry their lessons. The pulse that quickens at danger, the instinct to gather in groups, the need for light in the dark. They are echoes of a world we left behind but never truly escaped. We still build walls, still light fires, still tell stories of monsters beyond the edge of the camp. We have changed everything except what we are. Modern science calls this inheritance the predator imprint. It exists in every one of us, guiding decisions we don't even realize we make. The need for safety, the search for control, the fascination with danger. We are the descendants of prey that refuse to remain prey. Our bodies still remember what our ancestors endured, and our minds still carry the ghosts of those who taught us to endure it. In that sense, evolution is not a ladder, but a memory. The world did not give intelligence as a gift. It demanded it as a price. We paid that price in blood, in fear, in endless nights spent listening to the sound of footsteps that were not our own. And when the dawn finally came, when the predators were gone, we stood at the top of the food chain not through conquest, but through inheritance. The creatures that once hunted us are gone, but their presence remains in our bones, in our behavior, in our stories. Every myth of monsters, every religion that speaks of good and evil, every tale of light against darkness, these are not inventions. They are recollections. They are how we remember what shaped us. The human species did not evolve in peace. It evolved in terror. But from that terror came resilience. From that resilience came wisdom. And from wisdom came the one thing no other creature ever achieved: ability to imagine what comes next. The predators of the time gap are gone. their bones buried beneath layers of forgotten earth. But their influence endures, not as memory alone, but as the foundation of what it means to be human. They were the sculptors of our fear, the keepers of our flame, the silent witnesses to the birth of mind. Without them, we would never have learned to think. Humanity had learned every lesson the wild could teach. But what if, in mastering the predators, they had inherited their hunger? For millions of years, humanity had lived in fear of the beasts that ruled the world. They built fires, walls, and weapons not from pride, but from necessity. Every shadow was a threat, every night a test of endurance. Yet, somewhere along the line, something changed. The hunted became the hunter. The fire that once frightened predators now burned in the eyes of those who made it. In surviving the ancient world, humans had inherited something dangerous: its instincts. This was the paradox of evolution. The very fear that had kept them alive began to transform into a hunger for control. The mind that learned to anticipate attack soon learned to plan one. The same intelligence that created defense began to perfect the art of domination. The predators had shaped humanity so completely that their legacy continued long after their extinction, not in bone or claw, but in thought. Archaeological evidence shows the moment the balance shifted. In the caves where humans once hid from lions and hyenas, carvings began to appear, depictions not of fear, but of conquest. Spears piercing mammoths, hunters surrounding their prey. For the first time in history, humans saw themselves as the center of power. The lesson of survival had become a strategy of supremacy. The irony was cruel. Everything humans admired in their former enemies, strength, cunning, precision, they now saw reflected in themselves. They had learned from the predators so well that they became them. They hunted with the same patience as the crocodile, the same coordination as the hyena, the same ferocity as the lion. They had inherited the earth, but also its violence. What began as instinct soon became identity. The tribes that mastered hunting became dominant. Those that hesitated vanished. The mind that had evolved to survive danger now sought it. War replaced fear. Competition replaced cooperation. The predator was gone from the forest, but its spirit had moved into the mind. The fossil record reveals no single moment when this transformation happened. It was not an event, it was an awakening. Tools became weapons. Symbols of survival turned into instruments of conquest. The same fire that kept the dark away now burned villages and forests. The same intelligence that invented shelter began to invent territory. The line between survival and ambition began to blur. It was as if the earth, in sculpting humanity through danger, had given it a mirror instead of mercy. Humans had learned to outthink their enemies, but not their instincts. They were no longer prey, yet they still lived as if they were. Every invention, every wall, every weapon was built from an ancient fear that never faded. It simply evolved. There is a strange symmetry in the way nature works. The lion kills to eat. The crocodile strikes to survive. But humanity kills for reasons beyond survival, for dominance, for belief, for memory. The predators of the past acted without choice. Humans act because they can. That was the moment the balance of the natural world broke. In that fracture lies the paradox. To survive the predators, humanity had to become smarter than them. But to stay alive after the predators were gone, it had to become kinder. The problem was that evolution had no time for kindness. It favored the cunning, the alert, the ruthless. The genes that kept humanity alive were the same ones that would one day drive it to the edge of destruction. Even now, traces of that paradox linger in us. The thrill of competition, the fascination with danger, the instinct to dominate. All are echoes of that ancient inheritance. When humans fight wars, when they exploit the land, when they fear what they cannot control, they are reenacting a script written by evolution long before civilization began. Scientists studying human behavior call it the predator imprint, the neural legacy of the hunted learning to hunt. It drives ambition and aggression alike. It fuels invention, but also conflict. It is why humanity builds as fiercely as it destroys. The same mind that painted animals on cave walls also built cities that devoured the wilderness. The same hand that once crafted tools to survive now crafts machines that threaten survival itself. But perhaps the most haunting truth is this: predators never truly vanish. They transform. The beasts of the past became symbols, then ideas, then instincts. The danger that once came from outside now lives within. Humanity no longer fears the lion or the crocodile. It fears itself. Somewhere deep inside the human brain, in the ancient structures shared with every other creature that has ever killed or fled, the old code still whispers. The pulse quickens at threat. The eyes sharpen at motion. The mind prepares for conflict. The ancient machinery of survival still runs, unchanged. We are animals that learned to dream, but never forgot how to fight. And so, the paradox continues. The intelligence that lifted us above the beasts also made us their heirs. The question is no longer whether humanity can survive its predators. It is whether it can survive the predator it has become. The earth remembers the time before us, the silence of forests untouched by fire, the rivers that flowed without blood. But the earth also remembers the moment we rose, trembling and defiant, carrying the memory of every creature that had ever hunted us. We survived them all. The question now is whether we can survive ourselves. The story that began with fear is not over. It has only changed its shape. The beasts that once hunted humanity are gone, but their spirit moves through us still. Evolution does not forget. It only waits to see what its creation will do next. And in that silence, the shadow of the time gap remains. A question left unanswered, echoing through every age that follows. But if the predators of the earth could shape our past, what hidden forces might have shaped the world before them? The story of humanity has always been written in fragments, bones buried in dust, tools chipped from stone, whispers carved into the walls of forgotten caves. We know how we survived, how we hunted, how we adapted. But somewhere between those truths lies a silence that science still cannot fill. The time gap, the missing chapters, the long pause between what we think we know and what we cannot explain. When we look back at that lost age, something feels wrong. The timeline stretches like a wound, cleanly cut but never healed. There are moments in prehistory where evidence disappears as if the world itself blinked. Civilizations erased before civilization. Patterns of fire, tools, and bones that do not belong where they are found. It is as if humanity's story was interrupted, paused, rewritten, and resumed under different stars. The deeper scientists dig, the stranger the earth becomes. In layers of rock older than memory, they find carvings that should not exist, cuts too precise for the tools of their time, alignments too perfect to be chance. Buried under ash and ocean, pieces of a forgotten world whisper through the dirt, mocking our certainty. And in that whisper lies a question that refuses to die. What happened during the time gap? Some call it a void, others an awakening, but perhaps it was both. The age between predators and builders, between fear and knowledge, between instinct and intention. We know the beasts that hunted us. We know the world that came after. But what filled the silence in between? Fossils tell of extinction, yet not all were natural. Fire scars appear in patterns that suggest war. Bones of predators and humans alike found side by side, not from the chaos of chance, but from deliberate conflict. The hunted had learned to strike back. But what if something more had begun? What if, in that hidden age, humanity reached further than survival, into creation, into ruin, into something we no longer remember? There are artifacts that do not belong to their layers. Stones cut by methods that predate the rise of metal. Geometric carvings older than the species capable of making them. And across continents, from Asia to South America, symbols that match, lines and spirals that speak a language long before writing. It is as if the earth once spoke one tongue and we forgot its words. Perhaps it was a time when knowledge was born and lost in the same breath, when early humans glimpsed something vast, something forbidden, and the world itself closed around them. The sky changed, the beasts vanished, the rivers shifted. The record of life cracked like glass, and through that crack, only questions remain. Scientists call it coincidence, historians call it myth, but myths often begin as memory. Maybe those stories of gods descending, of floods cleansing, of fire from the heavens, maybe they were not metaphors. Maybe they were the fragments of truth left behind by those who lived through the silence. Every discovery adds to the mystery. The remains of walls beneath the sea, the alignment of ancient monuments to vanished stars, the strange synchronization of evolution across continents. Too much order for chaos, too much purpose for chance. And always, the same question waiting in the dark. Who taught the first builders to build? In the grand pattern of prehistory, the time gap is not just an absence, it is a scar. Something happened that rewrote everything. Perhaps it was a cataclysm, an extinction no fossil can fully record. Or perhaps it was transformation, when humanity began to look beyond the horizon and wonder why it was there. The beasts had shaped their fear, but something else was shaping their curiosity. When the predators vanished, the silence they left behind was not peace. It was opportunity. The forests that once echoed with roars now echoed with thought. Humanity filled the emptiness with fire, with sound, with imagination. But imagination is dangerous. It asks questions that nature never answers. And so the paradox deepened. The same minds that survived the hunt began to hunt the truth itself. They wanted to understand not just the world, but why it existed. They began to see patterns where others saw chaos, meaning where there was none. In that search for order, humanity may have stumbled onto something older than itself, something that watched long before we learned to see. Across the world, Ancient sites whisper the same riddle. Göbekli Tepe, built 12,000 years ago, a monument older than agriculture, older than writing, older than any city. Stones arranged with purpose by hands that should not have known geometry, astronomy, or art. Why? How? Who told them where to place the stars in stone? Maybe the answer lies not in the builders but in the silence between ages. The time gap was not empty. It was gestation. Something was growing in that void, the mind of humanity reaching for the impossible. The same minds that had fought lions and hyenas now lifted stones that defied gravity. The same hands that had once held spears now carved symbols into eternity. The predators had vanished, but the hunt continued. Only now, humanity hunted meaning. The truth of that lost age remains buried, perhaps forever, but deep down, we feel it. The sense that we are not the first to wonder. The feeling that beneath our civilization lies another, older one, forgotten, erased, but not gone. Its shadow lives in our architecture, our myths, our dreams. And maybe that is the real unanswered question. Not what hunted us, but what we inherited from those who came before. Perhaps we are the children of a forgotten fire, carrying forward a memory that even time could not kill. But the ancient world still held secrets that even the predators had not shaped, monuments carved by hands that should not have existed. And in the silence of time, they waited to be found. The story of humanity is a story of survival written in fear, fire, and memory. Long before civilization, before language, before belief, we were prey. The earth belonged to others, creatures faster, stronger, and older than us. Yet somehow, in that endless struggle between fang and flame, something extraordinary happened. From the hunted, a new kind of hunter was born. Every predator that stalked us became a teacher. The saber-toothed cats taught us awareness, the need to see before we are seen. The hyenas taught us unity, that strength lies not in the individual but in the group. The bears taught us courage, that even the largest obstacle can be challenged. The crocodiles taught us patience, that stillness can be more powerful than speed. The lions taught us respect, that true dominance is not cruelty, but control. Together, they forged the foundation of what it meant to be human. We learned to think because we had to. The first tools were not inventions of comfort, but of desperation. The first fires were not celebrations, but boundaries of safety. Each adaptation was a scar turned into strength. In the reflection of every predator, we found the fragments of ourselves, the ability to plan, to feel, to imagine. Evolution did not give us intelligence as a luxury. It forced it upon us as the price of survival. When we look at the fossils of those ages, the story they tell is not one of conquest, but of transformation. Our ancestors did not rise because they were the strongest. They rose because they remembered. Each encounter left an imprint not just on bone, but on behavior. Over generations, those instincts became thought, and thought became civilization. We did not inherit the earth, we inherited fear, and from fear, we built understanding. The lessons written by nature's harshest teachers still echo in everything we do. The cities we build are larger caves. The walls we raise are newer dens. The fires that once scared away predators now power our machines. The instincts are the same, the need for safety, for belonging, for vigilance. We still gather at night under light. whether it burns from flame or screen, because somewhere deep inside, we remember the darkness that once hunted us. It is humbling to think that the traits we are most proud of, our creativity, our empathy, our reason, were all born from the same place as our fear. The same brain that imagined gods once imagined the gleam of eyes beyond the firelight. The same heart that built civilizations still beats faster in silence. We are the sum of everything that once terrified us. Yet the story of the predators is not one of cruelty. It is a story of balance. Without them, we would never have evolved the will to adapt. Without their challenge, the spark of human awareness might never have ignited. Every great predator we faced shaped a part of what we became. Their extinction was not their end. It was their legacy. They live on in our instincts, in our caution, in the rhythm of our hearts. The saber-tooth still watches from the corners of our imagination. The hyena still laughs in our stories of fear. The bear still guards our myths of power. The crocodile still lurks in our dreams of the unknown. The lion still reigns in our symbols of courage. They are gone, but they never truly left. They are written into us, line by line, instinct by instinct, as teachers of a time when survival was the only truth. What humanity learned in those ages was not how to kill, but how to endure. That endurance became our greatest weapon. The predators ruled with power. We ruled with persistence. We outlasted them not because we were superior, but because we could imagine tomorrow. That imagination carried us across ice and fire, across continents and oceans, across extinction after extinction, until we stood alone. But standing alone came with a cost. The instincts that once protected us began to turn inward. The fear that once united tribes now divides nations. The hunger for safety became the hunger for control. We built walls higher than caves, fires brighter than the sun, and still, we are afraid. The predators are gone, but the echo of their presence haunts us. We conquered the wilderness, yet we have not tamed the wild within. Perhaps that is the final lesson. The beasts we feared were not our enemies. They were our mirrors. They forced us to evolve, to think, to dream, but they also left us with a question that no age has answered. Will humanity ever stop hunting? Or have we simply changed what we hunt for? In every heartbeat, in every shadow, in every flicker of light against the dark, we carry the story of that struggle. It is written in our genes, in our memories, in our history. We survived the time gap, not by erasing fear, but by learning to live with it. And that may be our greatest strength of all. We are the descendants of prey who refused to remain prey. The world shaped us through terror, and we shaped it in return. The predators taught us how to fight, but they also taught us how to feel, how to adapt, how to hope. In the end, they gave us the one thing no other creature ever possessed, the ability to turn survival into story. And that story is not over. The time gap still whispers through the bones of the earth, through the ruins of forgotten worlds, through the stars that watched us rise. We are still learning, still evolving, still haunted by the echoes of those who came before. The predators are gone, but their lessons remain, and as long as we remember them, we will never truly be alone in the dark. We have walked through fear, through fire, through the echoes of a world that no longer exists. We have followed our ancestors from the edge of extinction to the dawn of thought, through the dark forests of predators and the long silence of the time gap. What remains now is not the memory of terror, but the awe of survival. Humanity stands here today not as the strongest species that ever lived, but as the most enduring. We are the last witnesses to an age where every breath was borrowed from the wild. The beasts that once hunted us are gone, but they live in every instinct that keeps us alive. The roar of the lion still beats in the rhythm of our hearts. The patience of the crocodile guides our silence. The unity of the hyena echoes in our communities. The courage of the bear shapes our defiance. The precision of the saber-tooth sharpens our will. We carry them with us, like ghosts in our blood, whispering the lessons they left behind. When the last of the Ice Age giants vanished, the world grew quieter, but not safer. The silence left behind by their extinction created space for something new to emerge. Into that silence stepped us, the thinking animal, the storyteller, the builder. The predators had shaped our instincts, but the void shaped our imagination. The moment we were no longer hunted, we began to look beyond survival, to question, to build, to wonder. That was the beginning of another mystery. For as the beasts disappeared, something impossible began to rise from the earth. Monuments of stone, carved with purpose long before civilization should have existed. Across continents, the ground began to whisper a new question. Who built these? And why? Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, stones arranged in circles older than any city. The megaliths of Baalbek, each weighing hundreds of tons, lifted with a precision modern machines can barely replicate. The underwater ruins near Yonaguni, off the coast of Japan, carved in patterns too deliberate to be nature's design. The timeline does not fit. The evidence does not rest where it should. And the more we uncover, the less we understand. It is as if humanity's first architects were not the children of chaos, but the heirs of something older, something that existed in the shadows of the time gap. Perhaps the age of predators was not the end of our fear, but the beginning of our curiosity. Once the threat outside was conquered, we began to seek the mysteries within. The same eyes that once searched the horizon for danger began to look up, to the stars. Maybe that is the hidden truth behind the prehistoric gap in our story. What if, in the long silence between survival and civilization, humanity saw something extraordinary? What if they encountered not gods, but knowledge? Knowledge so advanced it was mistaken for divinity. What if those who hunted beside firelight became the first to build beneath starlight? Science offers only fragments, stones aligned to constellations, myths that repeat the same story across continents, floods, stars, visitors, rebirth. And in the heart of those myths, always the same message. We were not the first. We were not alone. Something guided the spark. For centuries, that idea has lived at the edge of heresy and wonder. Some call it lost civilization. Others call it collective memory. But deep down, the question remains. How did humanity go from fear to architecture, from darkness to geometry, from surviving the hunt to shaping the heavens? The answer may not lie in legend or science alone. It may lie in the memory of the time gap itself, the centuries erased by catastrophe, the moments lost between fire and stone. What if the very predators that once taught us how to think were only the first chapter in a story that reaches far beyond the earth? The deeper we dig, the older the questions become. The more we understand, the less we seem to know. The hunters, the hunted, The builders, the dreamers, they all left something behind, waiting for us to find it. Beneath the soil, beneath the sea, beneath the layers of history, there are structures that do not belong to any known age. And they are calling to us, just as the stars once did. Perhaps the true purpose of the time gap was not survival, but preparation, a test written into the bones of creation itself, to see if we could endure long enough to remember what came before. The predators refined our instincts, but the silence after them refined our spirit. Maybe we were being shaped not only to live, but to awaken. And now, thousands of generations later, we stand at the edge of that awakening again. The same questions rise from the dust, staring back at us through the stones of Göbekli Tepe, through the ruins beneath the waves, through the echoes of civilizations forgotten by time. Who built them? What knowledge did they possess? And why did it vanish? Maybe the answer isn't buried in the ground at all. Maybe it's written in us, in the memories we carry, in the dreams that repeat, in the unshakable feeling that we have been here before. What hunted us shaped what we became. But what built before us may define what we will become next. And as we search for those impossible structures, those monuments that time itself tried to erase, perhaps we are not uncovering the past, but remembering it. Because the story of humanity has never truly been about what we discovered. It has always been about what we forgot. But the stones are waiting, and the silence of the time gap is beginning to speak again. Because the story of humanity has never truly been about what we discovered. It has always been about what we forgot. But the stones are waiting, and the silence of the time gap is beginning to speak again. The fire of humanity never truly went out. It only changed its form. From the caves to the stars, from the fear of beasts to the fear of time itself, we have carried one question through every age. What came before us? The bones tell one story, the stones tell another, and somewhere between them, buried in silence, lies a truth the earth has tried to hide. We have survived the predators, mastered the elements, and rewritten our destiny. But what if the greatest mystery of all is not how we lived, but who built the world we inherited? The answers wait beneath the dust, carved in impossible stone, aligned to forgotten stars. And when we uncover them, everything we think we know about our origins